I know, but I'll
Get started.
just unlock it.
Welcome to those viewing from home as well. And to get started, we wanted to see if everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from our last meeting in February. Comments or corrections?
Make a motion that we adopt the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second, everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you for that. This evening's agenda, we have three main items. The citywide strategic plan, we're going to have a presentation on that, which is kind of coming to a head now. Some goals and priorities update that we've been working on for the last month or so and getting close to having that finished. And 40th Annual Issaquah Community Awards is a little something Jeff's going to talk about. So we have one community member here. Would you like to make any comment tonight? Okay, thank you for coming. And with that, I guess we are moving on to Jennifer talking about, is this going to be you or do we have
Yes.
another staff person?
Nope, this is me. I'm
You just do it all?
Jennifer Fink, park planner, and I'm here tonight as a member of the Citywide Strategic Plan team presenting the draft strategic plan, which is now out for community review. I'll be going through a PowerPoint presentation here and reading off my notes, so please forgive me if I'm looking down as I read my notes about the presentation. Gonna provide you a brief overview of what is in the strategic plan, also about the community engagement and how you can get involved at this point of the plan's creation and what some of the next steps are in the planning process. Work on the citywide strategic plan started over a year ago. To help guide the project, they established some key goals that would help the city take a more strategic approach to our work. And they include to better align efforts and focus energy to a clear vision and strategy on how to get there. At its core, the strategic plan wanted to work from community priorities. It is also seeking to strengthen the city's ability to make more deliberate and forward-thinking and informed strategic decisions. It also allows for near-term actions which can be understood within a strategic context. It increases the use of metrics and performance indicators to regularly gauge process and better inform decision-making. And ultimately, the strategic plan is an important means of communicating to the community about the city's plans and how they work to meet the goals and community aspirations. Because the community priorities are so critical to this plan, we started with a broad community-wide engagement process to gather a wide range of thoughts and perspectives around all corners of the community. They established both qualitative and quantitative goals and checked in with our progress throughout the initial engagement process. This slide shows the internal progress report, which can be found online, and it's been monitored weekly and adjusted our strategies accordingly. As part of the approach, there was a check back with the community, and to date, we've received over 1,650 community responses, and this strategic presentation tonight is a continuation of that process and to check back in on the draft plan. The early community engagement last March and April helped shape our vision, mission, and guiding principles. You may have remembered a brief update about that. The draft vision that came out of this process is Issaquah thrives as a welcoming community, creating a sustainable legacy for future generations that honors its rich history and passion for the natural environment. We'll now get into the plan itself and explain a little bit about the different parts and pieces about how the plan works. This sheet here is pretty much the plan on a Cliff Note page. It talks about our vision, mission, and guiding principles. It also has the 6 different goals that were identified as part of this. The 6 strategic priorities are called. These were identified through community input, outside consultant expertise, staff, senior leadership, council review, and council refinement. At the bottom of the page are the 6 goals with their definitions. Sorry, keep getting that little. These are the building blocks of the plan and describe key outcomes that can be achieved in order to achieve progress towards our goal. There's also potential actions that are identified on each of the sheets, which are meant to illustrate work that could be undertaken to make progress on these objectives. And success measures are meant to help gauge our progress in each of these goal areas going forward. As you'll see, the plan covers a lot of topics, being mobility, growth and development, environmental stewardship, social and economic vitality, city leadership and services, and infrastructure. It covers a lot of topics, but not everything that the city does. This plan will help focus our work over the next 5 years, but it does not mean we will be doing other important work as part of this process, such as police services, right? Just because police isn't mentioned here doesn't mean we're not going to be providing services. This is just one fragment of what it is we're doing on a day-to-day basis. There are 6 strategic priority areas, and these are not in any particular order, but the mobility, growth and development, environmental stewardship, social and economic vitality, city leadership and services, and infrastructure. Mobility. We'll kind of go through each of the goals here real quick and talk about some of the key elements and objectives in each. And you can find these on the strategic plan survey that's out right now. There's more information about all of these in a comment period, and I'll get you the link and go into the survey at the end of this presentation. But for mobility, the goal is getting around town is easier for people who live, work, and play here. Key elements: traffic affects many aspects of our life here in Issaquah, projected future growth in and around Issaquah, consideration of multiple modes of transportation, also focus on moving ahead with plans for our transportation system improvements. Some of the objectives, 3 objectives that are centered around this mobility goal is a plan for overall transportation system that is in place with funding secured to allow major projects to proceed. More near-term measures to make connections and improve efficiencies in the existing system. Not just about planning and preparation, but the near-term actions. The vision for a location for light rail is established, which recognizes the importance of light rail to Issaquah. Some of the performance measures for this have also been outlined as far as mode share. Down here in the bottom, these big dots are the performance measures. Travel mode share, system connectivity, system access, and community satisfaction. Growth and development. The goal for this is growth is proactively managed, planned, and communicated in a responsible way that retains our strong sense of community and livability. Some of the key elements of this are rapid growth and a desirable community. There are state policies, such as the Growth Management Act, that directly influence how much we are required to grow. The city's choosing to protect its hillsides and neighborhood to focus growth on the valley floor. As growth occurs, protecting the community's character and providing amenities, housing choices and services are still very important. And maintain livability as a key attribute in Issaquah. 4 objectives under this goal are to maintain neighborhood character and putting protections in place, effective implementation of plans with proactive adjustments with emphasis on livability and balancing of jobs and housing, working to increase the availability of public amenities, housing options, and services towards a more complete city for a community our size. Some of the performance measures are balanced growth, ratio of jobs, housing relative to the planned growth, keeping that balance, community livability, and infrastructure investment related to growth. Environmental stewardship, the goal is environmental resources are proactively enhanced, protected, and stewarded. Some of the key elements is the environment is a defining feature for Issaquah. Natural setting, strong sense of community and environmental values. Engagement of community, development of partnership to steward the Issaquah environment. Land acquisition for preservation and recreation. 3 objectives that came under this goal are protection and enhancement, stewardship activities, partnerships, and working with the community, strategic acquisitions for parks, trails, open space, and critical areas, and flood protection. And 4 performance measures are forest health, which is something we're currently working on with our Future Green Issaquah program, natural area restoration and protection of lands, salmon habitat health, and community stewardship participation. Social and economic vitality goal statement is an economically vital and diverse community is supported by robust businesses, affordable housing, and supportive services. Some of the key elements of this goal are residential housing, or residential growth, somewhat outpacing job creation. Housing affordability. It's hard for people who work here in Issaquah to afford the housing of the community. Likewise, more jobs that provide the ability to live and work within the community. More businesses to support more services. Improved access to the supportive services, as well as increased possibilities to live, work, and thrive here in town, rather than people living here and going elsewhere for their work. Some of the objectives are to increase range of living wage jobs, housing affordability across the income range to increase the live-work opportunities here in Issaquah, services to reduce inequities in health and well-being, also increase new businesses and retention expansion of existing businesses. For this goal, some of the performance measures are job growth, business growth, housing cost burden, and access to supportive services. I'm just kind of hitting the highlights. There's a little more information on each of these pages, so feel free to dig a little deeper. City leadership and services goal statement is leadership and accountability in the delivery of public services for our growing and diversifying community. Some of the key elements of this goal are the community is becoming more diverse. It's good engagement, diverse methods, clear communication must be well integrated into city processes, and service delivery, investment into internal operations and systems to better deliver services and focus on continual improvement. This goal has 2 objectives: equitable and welcoming city government, fostering meaningful engagement, and utilizing high-performing systems for effective and efficient service delivery. 2 performance measures for this are community engagement and community satisfaction. Infrastructure, the goal statement for infrastructure is infrastructure system that is planned, designed, built, and well-maintained supports current and future community needs. Key elements of this goal are infrastructure provides the underpinnings of local economic vitality, environment, and daily lives. The city has leveraged growth but needs to shift their focus on and consider not just expansion, but also the ongoing maintenance and replacement of the systems we already have in place. And also plan for recent growth as well as our future growth. One of the key objectives, but it's significant, is put plans and resources in place to operate and maintain and replace infrastructure throughout its system's life cycles. Also, effective asset management policy to manage the portfolio of streets, utilities, buildings, and parks. So this infrastructure really is that overarching umbrella for what it is we do here in the Parks Board. Performance measures would also be asset maintenance deferral rate, do some analysis on that, and community satisfaction with the quality of our infrastructure. So in putting the plan, that kind of concludes some of the, concludes with the implementation framework that describes tools for overall framework in which to situate the strategic plan. Since this is the first strategic plan for Issaquah, describing a disciplined approach to implementation will help outline the future expectations for making these changes. There are 3 components to this framework. The strategic work plan, and this little diagram here in the corner kind of demonstrates this. The strategic work plan talks about critical services work plan, timely opportunities. The city has many lines of business and ongoing necessary functions. The framework recognizes there's work that will align with the city's strategic plan. There's also other work that is meant to meet critical needs, and there are also emergent needs and opportunities that tend to arise. Strategic plan prioritization criteria includes 5 key criteria to help assess the relative favorability and timing of particular actions. And then on an annual cycle, this here, how the strategic plan really works within our plan of adoption. Annual calendar connecting the strategic plan with the budget planning process provides an avenue for adjustment and deliberation on current issues. It includes a period for reporting out to the community on our progress made. Also increases the accountability in our plan. Overall, it allows a scientific process of planning and doing and evaluating and adjusting, and establishes continued improvement as a central tenet for the strategic plan and the organization more broadly. Think, the strategic plan is a piece of our work, our critical services and daily work, and also the timely opportunities which can arise in all facets. So now we're seeking community from the input on the overall strategic plan, as well as goal area objectives and collection of potential actions. We've looped back with many of the people who've participated in this process so far, including survey respondents, focus groups, meetings in a box, charrette participants, and community members. We are collecting feedback through an online survey found on the city's webpage, and this survey is open through March 31st. So we'd love to hear your input, and I will take you to the survey right now so you can see.
Jennifer, I tried to go this link yesterday, or maybe this morning, and I was able to pull up the survey and answer something, but when I tried to submit it, it said that it was no longer taking feedback. So I don't know if anyone else had any issue with that. It seemed to me like that this was actually, like, that maybe it wasn't completely working.
Okay, I hadn't heard that, and I will let our Office of Sustainability, who's managing this.
But if it's supposed to be open, I'll try again. But
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
I was wondering if it was just an old link or.
Yeah, no, it should be good. And if not, you can try and use the one that's in the presentation here, which is the one I just pulled up.
That was the one I went to.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was able to type in a big, long paragraph, and then I submitted it, and then it just went away and said, this link was no longer taking feedback.
Well, thank you for,
Yeah,
I will
so.
let staff know, and we'll
And
double
also-
check it and make sure it's working. But yes, this is supposed to stay open till the 22nd. City Council will be reviewing this feedback in April, and we will be moving
Till what day? What day?
March 31st.
31st, okay.
Yeah,
You
sorry.
said the 22nd.
You said 22nd.
I did?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
31st.
That 20 seconds passed a few days ago. Holy cow. Sorry, 31st. I'm in a time warp.
Right.
March 31st. So council will be reviewing this in April, and then they plan to work towards plan adoption in May. So any feedback you have now, please put on the survey. And those who've already submitted comments, I will forward those on as well. But survey is a great place to see, because council will be getting all the feedback from there. That's all I have.
If you can recall last year about this time with the park strategic plan, this is a really critical time for this document, and that there's been a lot of work framing it up, but this community engagement it's critical. It's really key. It's a key time for the community to see it, feel it, touch it, and provide their feedback. I do know that the comment and feedback from the survey is going to be both very, very important for the consultant team and staff in shaping it and finalizing it, and as well as council as they start the adoption process. So, Jen, thank you.
Yeah.
Jennifer's been very involved in this. Melissa, Brian, lots of involvement and engagement with the parks team. So, great work.
And so everything that was on those little PowerPoints is also here on when you go into the survey. So all the potential actions and performance measures and everything is here for you to take a look at. Okay. So there's one for each and every little division here.
Questions, comments?
I have some
Thoughts?
thoughts that I'll share. So this was the first, I saw this, thought about this for the first time, I guess today. And felt that although there are images and sort of things that touch on Parks and Rec throughout this document, like practically all the pictures are, like of our parks and of people enjoying our parks, that it actually, the document itself did not affirm kind of that parks and recreation are a critical component to the city's livability. And so it concerns me that if this is our strategic plan, and if City Council is going to go back and look at this plan when it is balancing, or when it's deciding how to spend city funds, or balancing between one need or another need, that the fact that we don't call out that parks and recreational opportunities are important to the city and part of our strategic, one of the things that makes Issaquah such a great place to live, that we will miss out on funding those items. For example, there are a lot. The environment is called out specifically in this, and so I don't feel like we would have any issue acquiring open space and creekside properties and that. What I do wonder though is if we would have the same opportunities to develop, take advantage of some of the opportunities that have come up. So like, for example, when we look back the last few years, development of the skate park, investing in the teen cafe, senior center, like the program, taking over the programming at the senior center, even building the new turf fields, the sports fields. Those, if I were looking at the strategic plan, I would not actually find any justification. I'd have to reach within the plan to find justification. Maybe I could say, well, infrastructure, it's important to reinvest in infrastructure so we could do the turf fields. But most of that infrastructure component is really talking about reinvesting and taking care of our current system, at least as I read it. It wasn't about building new things that could allow us to make sure that we're providing the same amount of resources considering the amount of growth that's going to happen in our city. So that was one concern I had. Also just in connection with that, the program, the active recreation, the programming, the stuff that we do for youth and that we could potentially do for more youth or other citizens. So that's completely absent in this document. which is a big component of what Parks and Recs does. The other question I have is with the environmental or economic vitality section, and which focuses on attracting businesses that will create living wages, which is great. But I also think that we could do a better job of trying to attract businesses that will provide opportunities and recreation for our citizens. So, for example, a few years ago when we were talking about the indoor tennis facility, something like that, if that's an opportunity that we could partner with another organization or business, and we could provide some sort of benefit to an entity that was going to provide recreational opportunities. And I think of all the things that have left Issaquah over the last 20 years, like the bowling, a bowling alley, it was a water park, that was way before my time. But there used to be a business that was almost like a family fun center type thing. It had arcade and indoor fun things. Those businesses have all left Issaquah, and so it's up to the city to kind of provide replacement services and opportunities, or do something to affirmatively attract those businesses to come back into town. So I'm thinking indoor tennis, bowling alley, an outdoor pool, something like a family fun center, a Topgolf, zip line, pitch and putt, any of those kind of things. We may have land that we could lease at a discounted price. Maybe there are tax benefits or things like that. So I would love to see in that economic vitality section those sort of concepts reflected in there to provide us the opportunity to actually take advantage of partnerships that might come up. And then my last concern is without an affirmative statement that recreation and parks are important to the city, I am concerned that if the city owns land, that we could lose some land that is currently kind of parkland designated, but not activated, and so not actually used in our system, and that land could potentially be used for other purposes that are part of the strategic plan. Like, for example, affordable housing, and it may be that it's appropriate for the city to use surplus land or whatnot for affordable housing, but I want to at least be at that table and be able to talk about, well, what are the other trade-offs? Could we use it for a park or recreation and whatnot? And without, if only one use is part of the strategic plan and a priority, then we won't be able to have that conversation. So those are my comments. Sorry for taking so long. Who else?
Outstanding, Danielle. Really, a lot of good thoughts there.
I was going to ask, how is the park plan, strategic plan, work with this? Do they work together, or are they separate entities?
No, they're separate documents, but they're very complementary
But they're
to each other.
complementary with each other. So I was going to say, for your remarks, maybe some of that stuff you're looking at isn't in here because it's specifically in the park planning strategic plan.
I would say
If
that's
they're
probably
looking at both
true.
together, I don't know, do they look at both things together and they decide what the budget on? Or are they just going to look at this? I assume
No,
they
they'll
look at
both.
everything. Look at
Yeah,
all. Yeah.
so
Okay,
that was part of that one image
That
that
might
had
be where that stuff.
citywide strategic plan, your day-to-day services, and then the opportunities that arise. Just because we have the strategic plan, that's not taking away from our day-to-day. And just because police wasn't involved, doesn't mean we're not gonna
Yeah.
provide police services right anymore because they're not mentioned specifically in the strategic plan. So there are things that, because this plan couldn't address everything, that were more bridged with some higher language as part of those, but I certainly hear some of your specific.
I would say that you can be very specific without taking a lot more space in this plan. If it is a city priority, and if it is important, if the city recognizes the importance of parks and recreation and the opportunities that provides for community building and just healthy living and a sense of community, then we need to make sure it's in the strategic plan, because you don't want to have to be digging in and say, well, like, I think it fits within infrastructure. It might fit within growth and development. Growth and development talks about maintaining livability, amenities, infrastructure, community livability, but doesn't actually specifically call out recreation or parks other than natural space. So I really caution, I think words really matter. And a document like this, it really matters. And so to the extent that those two documents were supposed to complement each other, we need to directly tie them. And the city needs to affirm that this is important.
It's great feedback, and absolutely words do matter. And again, as a strategic plan that is not being led by this department, we certainly know that the intent with the adopted park strategic plan, that is very much meant and was intended to be complementary to this. But you're right, if and they're meant to be linked. If the link isn't obvious enough as you're reading it and as you're all giving your feedback, I think that's important feedback to provide, certainly. Because, yeah, you're right, when you look at the 6 goals, probably don't have that name, priorities, goals and priorities, the 6.
Priorities.
So much of those, what we do, what strategies are laid out in investing in our parks, open space, and trail system and our recreation programs, touch on most of those 6. So there's not a single point of connection. There are multiple points of connection. But again, I think as you put your resident lens on it, if that connection doesn't seem obvious, yeah, I think that's very worth pointing that out.
I would say it's implied.
Yeah.
And it for sure, like when you look at it, it feels like it's a park, like there's parks like laid throughout here.
Right.
But this document felt to me like much more kind of like, what are, like transportation, kind of affordable housing, the city leadership. It didn't actually feel like things that, to me, focus on what citizens experience here as part of living here.
It's great feedback.
Very good feedback, and it could be that, when you say implied, you may have more of an implied sense because of your connection with parks, whereas the casual reader might not have that, might not see it as much. So I do think they need to be pointed out in a high level, at least, so that if the more specifics need to be reviewed, it then points to the park strategic plan to actually see more of the content of that. So I hear it and agree.
I would hope that when the city is working on the affordable housing, that someone from Parks is involved with that, simply because when we were doing our strategic plan, we were talking about different ways that a complex could have recreation in it, that the people would be, if they are in a 5-story apartment complex, that they would have a place to go. And so I would hope that we have some input, or a large portion of input, so that the city knows that people need to be able to recreate close to home instead of trying to go someplace. Since they're trying to get us out of our cars, they have to have a place right there.
That's great. I think we've come a long ways in strengthening those ties in the development review process, early in the development review process.
But I totally agree with Linda, because one area that a city can kind of encourage affordable housing is by doing, by giving up something, right? And so I could see potentially a city giving up and maybe this is already in place, but the mitigation, like the parks mitigation or something like that, like the transportation, like the money that the developer has to pay. And if they're doing that and also not providing a place for their residents, and that's a really, that does impact us and is contrary to what we believe in.
I mean, we have the Highlands, and we have Tallis, and we actually have South Cove. That I don't know about South Cove so much. You probably know more than I do, since you live there. But I think that the Highlands and Tallis actually have some places to recreate, but they still have a ways to go. And I know we're working on a connection so that they do have the connection to get down here and do things. Where South Cove, I don't know if we've really, since they're kind of a new addition, that we've kind of said, yeah, you can get here. And I know when we were talking, the people on Newport said that it's really kind of treacherous sometimes to ride a bike or walk. And so I just kind of think if we're going to increase the population here, we have to be able to find places that people don't have to go a long distance to recreate, unless they want to do the trails. And obviously, a lot of people that move here want to do the trails, but there are other people that aren't going to be that motivated.
So please go to the survey here and feel free to enter your comments, and I will double check and make sure it's working.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, there you go.
Any other comments or questions on that part? If not, I guess it's Jen and Shantae talking a little bit about goals and priorities. It should be policies, shouldn't it?
Yep. Oh, well. Anyways, thank you. I'll start off here, and Shantae can join in as we get rolling here. As you may recall, last year during the adoption of the Park Strategic Plan, as we went through the Planning Policy Commission, one of the topics we were charged with as part of the adoption was to streamline and make our goals and policies a little more user-friendly and readable for the general public. So, was it last month or the month before, we formed an ad hoc committee, and I want to thank, January. So I want to thank Brad and Chris Kovac and Jonathan for joining in on that, as well as Ron Fall from Planning Policy Commission. The four of them are ad hoc committee working with Shantae and I, and we're going through basic reorganization of our goals and policies. Kind of walk you through the process we've been through. We're using a deductive process, and we took off all the blinders for all the goals and policies and the names and titles, and we just regrouped everybody and made sure all the goals and policies were in the proper buckets, for lack of a better term, making sure everything was where each policy, the kind of the essence, the main topic really sat well with, and we just reorganized everything. And then we went through and then we thinned out some of the language and got rid of some of the repetition and clarified each goal and policy under each policy under each goal. In that process, we did find that we added 2 new goals to the 6 we had, so we now have 8 as part of that reorganization. So we've been filtering through, going back and forth, kind of working on online documents, editing, and now have gotten to the point where we've got a draft plan put together for some final comments, tweaking, formatting, rewording. We have one more meeting left that we hope to be able to finalize this, in which case we'll be going back and, now that we've addressed all the policies, make sure that the goals are properly reflecting all of the policies that are now under them. Because we've realized with moving of a thing here and there, they don't quite word just specific, but we're getting there. So I want to thank everybody for their hours. You have spent quite a bit of time. Every time we meet, it's a 2-hour session, so they've been putting in some extra time. And we hope here in the next couple weeks to have a final draft put together, in which case we'll be bringing back to you for further comment. We are currently on the Planning Policy Commission to go back to them on July 25th. So we'll be seeking their approvals as well. And then we'll go ahead and update the Park Strategic Plan, as well as those goals and policies. We'll update the city's park element of the comprehensive plan.
So Jennifer, the goal is to finish the work with this ad hoc committee, have a draft, allow the park board to vet that, allow the park board to put their hands on it and stamp that recommendation. From
Yes.
there, it would then go to the Planning Policy Commission in July.
Yep.
Right. That's great.
We had talked at some point about maybe a reader review team. Is that still going to happen?
Yeah, we can most certainly do that after we get our draft put together. I'd like to make sure we go through our next round of draft, really get things tightened up before we do that and see if there's any glaring misses. So in this process, as we've gone through and basically taken all these policies through different sieves and made sure they're sitting right, dropping the extra words, we did find a couple of areas that we added some new policies to kind of fill in some gaps. So it would be good to get advice on those to make sure. So I would say once we're satisfied with our draft, that would be the time that we could do that. And we've got ample time between now, next park board, and even when we go to goals and policies for that effort. But would like to get that wrapped up due to other work plan items sooner than later.
A lot on our work plate. I really appreciate the work that Jennifer and Shantae have had in leading this, and the ad hoc team, really appreciate that. It does feel like we're on track. We certainly are giving ourselves enough time before that goes to PPC for a good reader team review, as well as a chance for you to see it, feel it, touch it as a full board a couple of times. So
Only one session with PPC expected? So that session in July is expected that they are to then essentially sign off on it before it goes to council?
Correct.
So they'll see it, well, before July then, they'll see it in probably the end of May, probably, to have some of their own internal discussions.
I'm not sure how Ron and Trish, I haven't clarified with them as far as process, but I know we're actually formally on the agenda for July.
it's been nice having Ron, a member of the PPC, on ad hoc, and we'll let him work with staff on how they want to prep and prepare the rest of the PPC for that, yep.
Anything else on that? Shantae, you gonna add anything that's all covered?
Well, I can just add that we've been tracking all the changes throughout the process. So
Yes,
if
we
anybody
have.
wants to see the thinking behind it, there's lots of comments, and
That's
every
a lot.
sentence has a number, so everything's well documented and being tracked.
Yeah, it's been quite a process. And I know there was some skepticism as we started this about how do you, start taming the beast. But I appreciate everyone's efforts and patience, because I know we've had a lot of good conversation.
I too, and it makes me realize finding that fine line that I again, as a group, I think you did, and that this was not, we were not in a place where our work plan would allow us to do a full-blown start over with goals and policies, but we wanted to do enough of a thorough revision that, in essence, this will live as our goals and policies as long as this version of the park strategic plan lives. But we know this is gonna be updated in a blink of an eye. 5
Yep.
years from now, we're gonna start that process, and when we do that, that'll be the chance to really, let's see how we like these goals and policies, and if we wanna do a more full-blown revision, we can do it then as well. So, thank you, I think the whole team finding that sweet spot of what we're able to get done.
Most certainly. And thanks to the ad hoc committee again for all your time.
You bet. Anything more on that? If not, I guess you're talking a little bit about the awards.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit and then pass it over to Brian. So as you know, each year, Issaquah puts on a large volunteer appreciation event in the spring, late spring, early summer. It's coming right around the corner again. This is the 40th year, so our recreation team, as we've done in years past, is bringing forward some volunteers that we would love to nominate and get your blessing on that, your approval. I can't emphasize enough, we have so many volunteers that we work with and are privileged to work with. And you look at any service we provide, whether it's maintaining parks, or getting really community feedback on how to build a park, that in a lot of ways is volunteer work to all of our recreation programs. There's not a recreation program we do that isn't possible without some degree of volunteer work. So volunteers are a key element to how we're able to accomplish what we accomplish. So, Brian.
So you teed it up well.
Yeah, like I said, we do this every year, right? So our team gets together and we have a number of discussions. Like I said, there's a lot of volunteers that we consider in this effort of which ones, sort of fall and rise to the top this year. So we have three different categories, right? We have the Youth Leadership Award, we have a Volunteer of the Year, and then we have a Sports Person of the Year. So in our discussions, we had three that rose to the top, and I have a few little bullet points here I'll share with you that we're recommending that the board approve. So it is because this is a park board award to these candidates. So we have three great individuals that we feel fortunate about. And like Jeff said, with the volunteers really do make our programs. We have over 2,000 kids playing basketball, right? K through 12. And those are all run by volunteer coaches. So you're talking, hundreds, 400 to 600 volunteer coaches that make that program go, and that's parents stepping up to coach, coach their kids and the teams, and that just wouldn't happen. Sometimes we get people that are volunteering to coach just because they want to, work with youth. So this is a tremendous community. When you talk to other communities and people, a lot of times they have a hard time getting people to step up for their programs. Our community almost always steps up, and we almost always get all of our coaches right out of the gate. So we don't have to work. We have to work hard, but not too hard to get all of our coaches. So with that, our Youth Leadership Award, we are recommending a young man named David Kim. He's a current senior at Skyline High School. He's been a part of the Youth Advisory Board since his 8th grade year. He's elected to the leadership team. He's co-chaired the Teen Advocacy Committee for the past 2 years. He spearheaded the State of Mind event in 2018 and 2019 to create a behavioral mini conference for teens and adults. And on that he acquired the speakers, the facility, and all that stuff, all the coordination that goes behind that. I have to read off these bullets because he has a lot of stuff under him. He's working on a team to spearhead a new TV program with the city, Channel 21, which we're on right now. They've actually filmed their first event, which is a little production on the garage, which is that sort of a youth teen cafe, and that's been filmed and ready to. I don't know when it's coming out, but it's going to be coming out shortly. He's an active member of YODA, which is now it's a tech committee, which is part of Influence the Choice, which is another youth organization. He's also an active member with BEST, which is now the Mental Health Committee, which is part of the Issaquah Schools Foundation. So, active young man. That's our Youth Leadership Award candidate. Our Volunteer Sports Person of the Year is a gentleman by the name of Will Compton. He's been coaching 2 or more teams for the past 8 years for a basketball program. So, that's a pretty heavy lift. They coach usually practice midweek, and then they have games on the weekends. So he's been doing that, and he exemplifies what we look for in a coach. He lives and breathes what positive experience in youth sports, teaching the fundamentals and good sportsmanship. Beyond being a volunteer, he also participates in our program and plays hoop down at the community center and in our men's league. So he's our sports person of the year. And then our volunteer of the year that we are recommending is a gentleman by the name of Don Riggs. He is volunteering at the info booth. He's been doing that for 6 years. Just wanted to get involved into his community and decided that, hey, I'm going to come down to the farmer's market and would like to be a part of that. So he's been doing that for quite a while, and some things that the staff were saying is he's become an integral part of the market. When he's not there, people are asking, hey, where's Don? So he's really become a vital part of that. He says he's friendly to everyone he greets with a smile and has a great sense of humor. He always has stories to share and talks to everyone like they're his long-lost friend. His favorite memory that he talks about with people is about why he does what he does is getting a chance to meet the people that he comes across that come to the market, as well as the staff and volunteers that work at the market. So that's why we keep getting him back year after year. So that would be our Volunteer of the Year candidate.
22 Saturdays a year from the
Yep.
market.
Yep.
Wow.
9 to 2 every
Yep.
Saturday, April through September, or May through September. Oof.
So you need a motion to approve those?
do.
For the, move to approve the slate
Yeah,
of candidates.
that's usually what we've done in the past, yeah.
I'll second.
Carl second. Any discussion about any of these applicants? Or recommendation people? If not, let's have a vote. Everybody in favor of these three people, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You have your three people.
Thank you.
Can you remind us when those, that event is?
May 30th?
I just sent you an email, so when you get home, you'll have it
Okay,
to
great.
RSVP if you'd like to join.
Well done. Yeah, already done. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Don't need to give you a breather because you haven't had a whole lot.
No, because you're on staff of the rock stars tonight. Yeah. No, thank you. Three items to touch on real quick under Director's Report. The first one is another one of our 2019 work plan items, the Urban Forest Management Program. One of our key operational strategies in the park plan was how do we better position ourselves for stewarding our critical urban forest. If you recall, under that program, we wanted to launch and become a green city, and this is part of the Green Cities Initiative that Forterra puts on. Forterra is a nonprofit that partners with a number of cities throughout King County and even into Pierce County. We had our kickoff meeting with the Forterra team. Myself and Matt Meckler and Jennifer and Shantae had a great conversation. That work is really beginning to take shape, and I wanted to sort of update you on what to expect timing-wise. Forterra, I will get you information on our Green Cities Initiative, or what this Green City Initiatives are for multiple cities that Forterra does this work in. It's going to start with a forest assessment. So we're going to be mapping all of our forested land, all of our open space and natural resource lands, both within our active parks, but also our forested hillsides, our creekside properties, our wetlands, etc. I think even as we were doing work this afternoon, it will be in the 12 to 1,300 acre category. What will be important in mapping that is they will then hire their team of forest managers, and a forest assessment will be done for all of that land. And this program that they've set up creates an assessment of every single acre and categorizes that acre in a grid of what they call, get ready for it, it's kind of punny, triage, T-R-E-E, age. But it's really evaluating on a scale at sort of 9 different grades. Each of those acres are identified in terms of either how threatened they are, threatened with invasives, threatened other ways, what is their general health, the trees' general health, the forest's general health. That tree assessment then really becomes the basis of this program, this Green City Initiative, in that we're then able to really prioritize and evaluate where do we see, where is our forest most threatened, where is our forest most healthy, where do we need to be prioritizing our resources, how do we, so that was really, will take a bulk of the first year. We're going to be having some community engagement as we do that work, and through that work, likely in May, we'll be meeting with sort of key stakeholders, those partners that we've already worked with in stewardship, whether it's volunteers. Mountains to Sound Greenway will be invited into this as one of our other partners. We'll be doing some community engagement that will probably be later this summer, fall. All that forest assessment and engagement work's going to really help in formulating the plan itself. Year 2 will be implementation, will really be the priority of year 2. That will take the form of creating a steward program and really taking what we've been able to do volunteer-wise here in the city for a number of years, and I think in a lot of ways multiplying that in some pretty powerful ways, and multiplying it in an informed way, and that now we're focusing those volunteers and those stewards on the areas and the acreage of our urban forest that are most critically in need of it. So exciting work ahead, and great to have Forterra sort of in partnership with us. We have so many powerful partners in the forested lands around us. I think Forterra is really just one more player to jump on board and be a partner with us. So lots of work ahead with that one. A second update I want to give, and is the PowerPoint?
Can I ask a question about
Oh,
that?
yeah, please.
So, are they looking at just city-owned land, or are they also identifying, and maybe I missed this, but are they also identifying privately owned land that is part of kind of our forest to help us identify, like, what, if that, like, because that, like, a piece of undeveloped hillside land that's privately owned might be critical to the forest?
The focus of
City.
this work, of the Green Cities Initiative and those 1,400 acres will be city-owned, publicly owned now. Certainly our priorities within our park plan for hillside acquisitions and identifying those, maybe other private properties that are playing a critical role that might be a priority for us to look at. We'll be doing that in separate work, but this work is really our public land is the focus of it, because it's really about stewardship and maintenance.
And not the state land.
What's that?
Not the state land of
No.
Tigers.
Okay, sorry.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
that's a
Do you
great,
want the
great
PowerPoint?
question. Yeah, oh, cool. So, before you reveal the photos, we had some snow in February. You remember that? A while ago? That was a pretty major event for this community, and in many ways, once again, our department stepped up. And I've got one example that is a small example of some pretty amazing work that our department did. Along with park maintenance and a really key park maintenance team that we have here, we also, as a department, are responsible for facility maintenance. The entire facilities division is within our department. And if you could imagine making sure, as the snow was falling pretty frequently there for a week and a half or 2 weeks, making sure these buildings, these city buildings, were open, accessible, functioning, was a big lift that was done by the facilities team, putting in a lot of extra hours, a lot of critical hours, making sure those buildings were functioning. Our recreation team, who, as you can imagine, opening a pool and a senior center and a community center, and are those open or not open, and how do programs keep going, how do we keep our customers safe, how do we ensure we're not putting anyone in danger. There was a lot of day-to-day decision-making that had to be done. I think we were pretty much huddling every afternoon to determine, okay, what's a go and what's not a go, and where are we at for tomorrow morning. In all of this, community wants to keep doing what they do, right? We had a wedding that was booked on the Saturday, I'm gonna get the dates right, the 9th of February, I believe. That Friday was the day the big snow came, about 3 in the afternoon, if you remember. We had a number of events canceled. We had to cancel our youth basketball program for that Saturday. We postponed the father-daughter dance, the Valentine's dance that we had. We had a rental group at Pickering Barn that had been planning this for 14 months and really, really wanted to give it a go. That rental represents a large investment on their part. And so as we huddled with staff and said, all right, what are we gonna do? You know, in the case where we have our own programs and we're saying, hey, come to a dance, we felt it was very important to not have residents feel like they had to come and get on the streets. In cases where we had a rental group that really didn't want to postpone it, how could we provide that service as well and make sure that facility is available? And I say all this because what we do is, it's very rarely prescriptive, cut and dry, slam dunk, easy answer. The answer is usually a myriad of pros and cons and trade-offs, and our staff did an amazing job. And we, the mayor was given a email last week from the family of this wedding that was over the moon and was so appreciative of just the extra steps that the city took, not only department staff, but really just as a city. We had streets that were accessible and drivable, and they included a couple of photos that you can go ahead and share that were stunning, that really, I think, in the case of our Pickering Barn staff, it's just a major kudos to them and the hard work they did to make this space available, and the memories that were made just by this rental group, and really, in a lot of ways, a testimonial that we now have that, again, a snow event that took 2 weeks, this is one little snapshot of, I think, some work that our staff and our team went above and beyond in terms of doing what we do every day. So fun feedback. Always nice to get those. We often get the other feedback as well. So
I'll just add that we pulled off too, the team did. Friday night was the rehearsal dinner, and they did that at Tibbetts Creek Manor. So both those big days of snow, we're able to pull off both those events. And like I said, many hands went into that one, so.
You don't have any pictures of Brian shoveling snow out the community center or anything like that?
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of those.
Yeah, I'll share that. I really, not just from Parks and Rec standpoint, but just the city really did do an excellent job of keeping the roads clear and just, they were just completely on top of it. And not all of our neighbors had as good of experiences, so I was really happy, and and the pool was open, and for the most part, and it was great. So good job.
thanks.
Hasn't always gone that well.
Yeah. One last item real quick. You did certainly know another key project that we completed, the acquisition of the Bergsma property. That work's not done. You've heard me say this a number of times. I just wanted to let you know, earlier this month, first week in March, we did submit our first significant grant of a series of significant grants we're going to be applying for over the next 2 or 3 years. This one was with King County Conservation Futures grant. We've requested a multi-million-dollar request. We have our tour in that as staff. I'm going to invite Trust for Public Land staff to come as well. The review committee will be hosting them on site on Saturday, April 6th, and sort of further telling our story and telling why this is such a key regional acquisition and why this is such an ideal candidate for that significant funding to help happen. So keep you posted on how that goes, but April 6th, point up to that edge of Cougar Mountain and give a good some positive mojo. So more to come.
Good, thank you for that. Kind of a good segue into a couple things I wanted to mention, actually. Some of this is old news, but it's also pretty current news, and I just wanted to bring some attention to some real key elements on a national stage of what's occurred in our area. Some of you might be aware of all of these, but I don't know what your outreach is, so I wanted to at least point it out that they're going to have some real benefits for our community moving forward. One of the most significant ones is that the Mountain to Sound Greenway has been now designated as a National Heritage Area. That's just a terrific compliment to our area, especially Issaquah being a bit of the gateway of the Cascades, and there'll be more discussed about that in the future. But this is really just an incredible collaboration with a number of agencies and community members to really make this happen. It took 8 years in the making, and for those of you that don't know, I mean, the Mountain to Sound Greenway really runs the I-90 corridor from Seattle all the way to Ellensburg, and so it's a huge area. It's actually the first National Heritage Area in the Northwest, so I mean, I just can't say enough encouraging things about the impact that will have on the region, as well as parks and open space within our community. It will have a national stage now to discuss history and heritage. It will encourage restoration and preservation in that area. It will grow funding opportunities for the future, and will have a significant impact on regional tourism. So I'm sure you've heard of it. If not, take a look at more of what's written about it. Mount Descent Greenway actually has a number of articles about it. One of the other key elements on a national stage of support for us in this community is the Land and Water Conservation Fund that has received bipartisan conservation progress and has now been voted in to support this. It's a national program, but actually the state actually gets some funding for natural resources and outdoor efforts. So that's just another big national support of what we do here. Kind of the last on a national stage I just wanted to mention is the National Wildlife Federation has listed Seattle and the Seattle area as one of the top 10 key urban cities and environments in the country that preserve and protect wildlife. So, you know, that's just, I don't know that that's news to anybody that lives here, but it certainly shows, you know, on a national stage, you know, the importance that we hold in our wildlife and habitat areas. So really wanted to just give a big shout out to those three huge programs that actually support on a much larger stage, you know, what Parks does for the community, and that will support for many years to come in future efforts. So on more of a local basis, I wanted to just make comment. I think I've made comment a little bit about Laughing Jacobs Creek, the potential feasibility study that's underway to redirect Laughing Jacobs Creek fully through the state park. I've just recently joined an advisory group to take a look at some of this, and consultants are now actually producing reports. There's been one from cultural, one from hydrology, and one from habitat restoration. And so that's really moving forward. We're going to have another big meeting next month to discuss this project potentially moving forward. For those of you that don't know, I mean, Laughing Jacobs Creek runs off the Sammamish Plateau down to Lake Sammamish, but the lower portion of it runs through some private land, and the intention is to try and redirect the lower portion to go through state park land, so it will have an awful lot more opportunity for habitat restoration and some better controls for fisheries. Laughing Jacobs just happens to be one of the last remaining tributaries in Lake Sammamish that supports kokanee, and so that's another big focus as to why this project has received recognition and funding to deal with that. So I'll be keeping you advised more about that, but that's a pretty significant undertaking that's going on, and just wanted you to be aware of that. I know it's a state park issue, but we're all a part of the same intention here. My last thing is we have board interviews coming up here from now over the next few weeks, and we have to make some recommendations by the end of April to council and the mayor to support our suggestions, and so I wanted to request some volunteers to have an interview team, of which I'm volunteering. Is there anyone else that would like to join?
What are the specific dates? 'Cause,
Don't have any dates yet.
We don't, but ideally, relatively quick turnaround.
Before April 15th?
What's that?
Before April 15th, you think?
Before, yeah.
Probably.
Ideally, yeah.
Because I'd volunteer then, before then.
As
I
long
mean,
as, is that a condition, it has to be before the 15th?
Yeah, can I take off for?
Okay. Another travel extra?
All right.
You need to start taking some of us with you here.
Right?
It took 42 years to retire, but it was worth it.
I may be able to help depending on the dates, so.
Okay, Ruben, Danielle, anybody else want to be involved? That should be enough. Okay. Thanks, and that's it for what I have to say. Jacob?
Yeah, so we had the same presentation or similar presentation from Mr. Fujimoto, I think, about the strategic plan at the last youth meeting. So we should be getting some feedback on that because we're all supposed to answer the survey, or at least we talked to him with a bit of a Q&A about things you liked, didn't like. So there was a bit of in-person advice. And in terms of events coming up, we have the State of Mind, which was mentioned earlier. It's on March 30th. It's a Saturday. If you're interested in going to that, it's a mental health related event. It's not just for teenagers, it's also for adults, so it's something to learn for everybody. And we have the Keep Issaquah Beautiful Day, which we're going to volunteer at on April 20th. That's the Saturday before Earth Day, which is the Monday following that. It's not specific to the youth board, but if anyone's interested in volunteering, it's on Saturday, April 20th, I think from 9 a.m. to noon, and then you can select from this sign-up form a bunch of different locations. Like they have a bunch of slots, sort of, for different places in Issaquah, so you can kind of choose somewhere that is more meaningful to you. And yeah, I think our main focus right now is the triathlon, which is our biggest event of the year. And that's going to be the first weekend in June.
If you wanted to volunteer at the Keep Issaquah Beautiful, where'd you go to sign up, or where would you find those sign-up sheets?
I saw it on, I got an email with it, so I would have to email you guys because I don't remember.
Shell station.
I think it's the Downtown Issaquah Association.
Okay.
We can try and get information on that.
There's an online sign-up though, which is what I think she was asking about, and I don't know the exact source, but I can find that out because I have it linked in an email. So if you guys want to hear more about that, I can just send you guys an email, forward it,
That'd be great.
That'd be good. Thanks, Jacob. Anything else? Good. Any other comments, new business, discussions?
I was just curious, is the city doing any, like, maybe perhaps this is the Earth Day event, but sometimes there are other Earth Day events that happen in the city, or thereabouts, or?
There is an Earth Day event being scheduled as well. We'll get you that information. On that same day, we're partnering, the last 3 years have partnered with State Parks, Mountain Sassoon Greenway, and the City of Issaquah to co-host an event. We're doing that again, so as those details get refined, we'll send that out also. So,
Great.
busy day in Issaquah.
Anything else? If not, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Spencer.